Hello, all. Welcome to another episode of DirectShifts Stories. I'm excited for this particular story, which is a little close to my heart. And today we have a versatile and insightful mental health program leader, an innovator who is also creating that history of driving the change in the community. He's integrating cutting edge programs for individuals with substance abuse and also people who are in need of counseling services, people who need that evidence-based treatment approaches, or probably training with kind of high quality care. So today we are joined by an accomplished speaker, a senior level professional who had demonstrated mental health expertise within the community, within the various institutions and organizations, who is also into career development, who had helped many groups. He also facilitated many workshops. He supervised and managed even sex offense at the workplace. So let's hear it from Thurman Brown. Please welcome Thurman Brown, our guest for today. Welcome, Thurman Brown.
Hey, hello everybody. How you guys doing out there?
Okay, so thank you, Thurman Brown, for accepting this invite to be one of our speakers. First of all, I would say happy Social Work Month.
I'm not a social worker, but yeah.
But again, March being the work of social, for all the social workers out there, again, it's one of the most important things for us, because we are connecting clinicians. We have lots of therapists, counselors. In fact, so could you please share us your journey, Thurman Brown, as to how was your childhood and how did you become a coach? Could you please share your journey for our audience out here?
Yes, I will. I've always told people who I've counseled that, or people who I've supervised, that don't put nothing out there if you haven't processed it yourself. So I'm going to be transparent with you guys, and I'm going to tell you some things about me that I have processed. I'm still struggling, but it is what it is. But the childhood journey, well, I will say this, I can remember as far back as 5. I grew up with a mother, my father, New York City. My father was, ultimately, he died of AIDS. He was my father, first and foremost, but he had a disease, substance abuse. He died of AIDS at the age of 40 because he shared needles. But my first memories of him is domestic violence. We would hear, as a 5-year-old, the sound of, flesh slapping against flesh, and his, manly voice screaming at my mom. So, I can remember standing behind doors with my 2 siblings, crying and stuff like that. So, those are my first memories of my father. Then my mother separated from him, took us to North Carolina, and we began living a different kind of life in a different environment. I mean, in North Carolina, I mean, cows and, grass and stuff like that. It was totally foreign. But I remember her to be a nurse's aide. So, and I remember her to be a loving woman. She married a serviceman, James Williams, and he transitioned out of the service. And I guess he was driving the big 18-wheeler trucks, because I remember seeing those in the yard down there. But ultimately, my mom succumbed to alcoholism, and really one domestic violence relationship after the other. James wasn't a domestic violence guy, but when James would go off on these long runs, my mother, she's a young woman, she played in the field, so she's drinking alcohol and entertaining folks. So ultimately, it was my mom's, me, my brother, and my sister, and alcoholism was a really, really severe thing in our household to the point where my moms would bring men home who would molest her drunk body. Basically, I call it rape, but we would have to hover over her in order to keep these individuals, away from her to the extent that we could. So ultimately, at 13, I came back to my father because my mother couldn't handle three kids. She was on public assistance, so the food stamps and monies that she was getting monthly would go towards alcohol. So we would be left to, go to family members, in the summertime, canned food or, surviving that way. When I was, 12, 13 years old, I used to collect cans. And on the can, it used to always say no deposit, no return. It was worth 5 cents. So 20 cans would be $1. And that's $1 worth of bologna or something to
Wow.
that effect. But that taught me something about people, collecting cans. If because someone could throw a can out of a car door and it could land in the bushes in the briar patch or whatever the case may be, my job is to reach my hand in there, whether it's a snake or a porcupine or whatever kind of animal may be there to redeem that can. Because if I clean the can off, and I could redeem it for 5 cents. So people are that way, I believe, to some degree, once they are on substances. As a counselor, my job is to help clean people off, help them find themselves, because if you don't make a deposit, you don't invest in their life, you can't get a return. So, my philosophy has evolved from that childhood experience. So it was rough and tumble, but we are who we are, and life is the way it is for folks. And I don't, it's kind of tough, but I look back, my moms and my father, they did the best they could with what they had. So we move forward from there.
Yeah. So was this back in 90s, Thurman? Thank you so much for sharing that. Again, being vulnerable in the current scenario, sharing a story which had transformed your parents. In fact, be it your mother, or be it with respect to what you mentioned about James William.
Yeah.
So was this in 90s or was this in
Now
80s?
I'm a '70s child, so I was born in '65. So all of this
Oh,
was taking place in the '70s, and yeah, because I came back to New York City in 1975. I was 13, 14 years old. No, yeah.
oh, okay. Um,
So
so definitely, I mean, by looking at you, I thought you are not that old, but thank you so much. So what you shared is amazing. If you like the way you said, if you can't make a deposit, you can't get a return. That's also again with the way we engage with people socially now. Again, to create that conversation or to create that engagement, or if you need happy smiles, or if you need happy comments or happy shares, people are so addicted now. I would say the 21st century addiction is again the gadgets which we have out there.
mm,
People who are glued. So the new alcoholism, I would say, or abuse would be the kind of addiction which we have to digital elements. Probably the many who might disagree to this, but it's changing the way we connect. It's changing the way we do teletherapy. In short, so, could you share as to how you became a coach? How did you start Thurman Brown Consultant? So, what made you start this business? Because earlier you worked in the healthcare space, or probably helping clients in the healthcare space. What made you come up start this business, or how did you become an entrepreneur?
well, I had some experiences with being a manager or director of programs, and what I saw was like there was not a lot of efficiency there. You know, you can look at counselors, and I worked at a medication assisted treatment program, VIP Community Services. It was a certified behavioral health clinic. Uh, I worked in the OTP department, so we had 1,400 medication assisted treatment clients. These clients did methadone, Suboxone, and Vivitrol. So my job was to increase access to services to take this certified behavioral health clinic and turn it into a CODI, or a
Okay.
Center for Treatment Innovation. And what I saw when we started putting processes in place, processes within existing processes, I began to notice that a lot of the clients was going through their process without meaningful engagement. Some clients didn't, you know, have counselors. Some clients didn't, you know, they wasn't receiving the kind of care that they should have been entitled to going through a program. So, and when I looked at that, I saw that my role would be to really set procedures and processes in place that would re-engage people into treatment. So ultimately, I took that knowledge and knowledge that I had gathered from other roles that I had. And I thought to myself, I said, you know what? You know, I'm going to create a consulting firm, a consulting company where I could sell content, because I know that in New York State, I was also a resident director of a facility called Education Alliance. And it was a therapeutic community that had two residential treatment programs. My job was to come in and consolidate both of them and create a new program, which would be an 820 residential redesign. So, 820 residential redesign has three elements: stabilization. Stabilization is really a medical model where folks who may be experiencing withdrawal symptoms coming out of detox and that kind of thing, where they come into a residential setting and they will be monitored for a 2 week period of time to see whether or not they're ready to transition into rehabilitation. But that's only done through uh, the medical part of the agency. But once a client is transitioned into the rehabilitation stage, then that client will be going full fledged to group and individualized treatment, having access to a social worker or a substance abuse counselor, and going through that process. So a lot of it was, I think, at that time in 2016, it wasn't
Yeah.
a lot of programs that had expertise in 820 residential redesign. So I took that information. I had been in this program for like 2 years, so helping design it. So I took that information. I said, you know what? So I'm gonna start a consulting and sell that kind of information along with, you know, really trainings and that kind of expertise, because I knew that people were disconnected in their job space in terms of, you know, having real access to a supervisor and that kind of thing. So I wanted to change the paradigm and bring something different to the table.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Thurman, for sharing that. In fact, the one big question which I have is, how do you do? What makes you keep going with the kind of stuff which you're doing? Because recently I'd seen one of your LinkedIn posts where you spent close to 52 hours on life coaching certification. I'm like, where do we have the time? Because in the pandemic, people are so uh, everybody's in a roller coaster ride with their own thoughts. But how do you stay focused to deliver the best for your clients?
Well, you have to. I look at it this way, because I don't have a licensed clinical social worker licensure. I need to have other tools that I can work with. So I was talking to I do therapists for Black males with Amira Crawford. She owns this agency that does therapy for Black males and Black females. So we had she had a dilemma. The dilemma was we were getting clients who were out of state who wanted couple therapy. So we needed to figure out a way to uh, we didn't want to turn these people away. So the only way we could do it is that I would get training in life coaching because I could provide life coaching services. So in that way we can really talk to the couples who had substance abuse problems. In that way we could reach. It would be legal for me to give counseling services to couples if I had the 52-hour certification. So I had to, put the time in order to make the thing happen because it made good business sense, and it also gave me the opportunity to leverage some of the expertise and some of the knowledge that I have in these areas in the couple space because I have done a family association kind of a therapy. I've also, trained in craft, even though I didn't get certified in it. I went through all of the craft modules. So I said, you know what? I'm going to put the 52-hour certification under my belt so that way I can have a wider pool of people that I can provide services to.
Okay, awesome, Thurman. So now I see that it's part of your job to complete that 52 hours. Again, with respect to other certifications and learnings, because it's an ongoing journey.
Mhm.
Normally, when you deal with adults, somebody who is with substance abuse or with alcohol abuse, how do you handle them? Because they are not children. We can't tell them saying we can't obviously with the kind of language there shouldn't be any cursing or we shouldn't be saying them strictly, but how do you deal? What is the step by step methodology, or do you have any secret sauce, any magic recipe, I would say? How do you cope up with the step by step methodology?
Well, I think that, counselors, I rely on my own training. And when I talk to folks, I think that one of the best ways to approach people in an evidence-based way, I choose motivational interviewing because it gives me so many different tools that I can use in the engagement process. Because with me, first of all, you got to be genuine when you talk to people. So people want to hear somebody that's empathetic to what their situation is. So one of my goals is to always to see the situation clearly and help people to identify what it is that they want out of their situation. So, uh, motivational interviewing helps me to explore discrepancies in a respectful kind of way. It helps me to rephrase exactly what it is that the client is saying so that way they can know that I'm actually trying to understand what it is that they're trying to say. And you put your active listening skills together. It's more components than that. But to me, really, in order to have retention or keep a client coming back the next day, you really need to have a meaningful engagement with the person because don't nobody want to come back and talk to someone who's going to be pulling their hairs out and making them feel worse than they already feel. So my job is to really develop an alliance. I'm not your homeboy, I'm not your homegirl. But I am someone who wants to help you in this discovery of what are your issues. Because I always believe that the origin of trauma is really probably some of uh, it would explain a lot of substance use disorder. So I want to ultimately have a wide ranging conversation with people until we can begin to narrow down what the issues really are. So I use the tools in my toolkit.
Okay. And so what would be the essential items or essential things for the road to recovery? Obviously, people who would get on a one-on-one discovery call or a consultation with Thurman Consulting would know the things which are there in the toolkit. But what would one need apart from the coaching fee or the therapy time? What would they need on the road to recovery?
I think that they would need to be able to tap into the confidence to take it one moment at a time. Just to really be able to say, hey, for the next hour, I won't use. because we can start there. For the next 7 hours, I won't use, and I'll begin to really start thinking about other things that could distract me from my cravings or cues to use. Because when I'm with a client, I want to be able to develop almost immediately a relapse prevention plan. How do we avoid not using? So I want the client to identify some of the things that would really want to make them begin to use again. So we want to develop a contingency plan. Relapse for some folks is a part of the equation, but it don't have to be for everybody. So I'm one of those counselors who harm reduction is a part of the equation. So a relapse doesn't necessarily mean that it's the end of the world. And I need for a client to understand that we just need to get back on point and make some commitments to ourselves. And it's really about honoring ourselves. The best life that you can possibly have is around the corner, but you got to not be exhausted. You got to get around the corner. And that's one moment at a time.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So there should be this acceptance from the client. There is this trust in the way you communicate and how the conversation proceeds. Awesome. I guess definitely anybody out there who wants to get in, probably trying to be a better version of themselves, be it with substance abuse or with drug abuse, I guess definitely they can go through the strategic points and step forward. So you've been doing this for over 19 years, as again the bio profile which I've been going through. But what was your first job like? What did you do at the beginning of your career, right out of college? What was your first job?
Well, my first job was fresh out of substance abuse training. I had his name is Lawrence Porter. He was my advisor. So he came to me one day. He said, Thurman, because I was doing the 350 hours in order to get the KSAT certification. So what he
Oh
said,
God,
he said, hey,
350 hours?
yeah, 350
Wow.
hours in the 12 core function of counseling. So, but in
Whoa.
this particular program, they also had a internship. So he says, I have an intern project for you because I had did some work with as a counselor aide with sex offenders. So he said that there was this place called Metropolitan Corporation for Life Skills. It was a sex offender modality that was looking for trainees to conduct groups. Would I be interested in working with sex offenders? So I said, sure. Because I'm, of the mindset that's, I believe that sex offense is an addiction as well. So I put those things in that category. So he said, I think that you're fit for this particular, trainee assignment. Would you like? And I went there and I was there under Kristen Clark for about 2 months. She was the director of the program. And the funny thing is she was like, hey, Thurman, I like the way you conduct groups. Would you like to transition from an intern to an employee? And I was
Wow.
like, well, because I was just there to accumulate hours. So she said, I give you $2,000 a month. So I'm looking at it like, okay, I came in the door just to accumulate my hours for an internship. So now she's willing to pay me $2,000 a month. Sure, I'll take that. So that's where it really all started.
So you started, okay, so you were in your 20s, or when was this like?
No, that was later on. I really started to. I used to. Let me take it back. A lot of folks don't know this about my bio or about me, but I have put it out there. I was wrongfully convicted. Stayed
Oh,
inside of incarceration for 12 years, 9 months, and 17 days. And in that process, when I went inside of corrections, and they are, we dealing with it, so it is what it is. But it was a wrongful conviction, and that stands. So, but while inside, I got my GED. I started going to college, but I met someone who got me in contact with the Department of Labor. So I became a counselor's aide while inside, and I worked inside the Department of Corrections while addressing my issues as a transitional services counselor. In one particular jail, 90% of the population were sex offenders, but they needed 10% of the population, and I was part of the 10% to actually do the programming and running the jail for them. So I ended up in that kind of situation. So I stayed inside of transitional services from a counselor's aide to ultimately becoming the residential director. So as the residential director, it gave me the opportunity to prepare 17 counselors or counselor's aid for group therapy, parole, preparing guys to transition from, coming inside prison to going on parole and doing communication and all those kind of things. So that's where my original exposure to sex offenders came into play. And my when I was, out in the street and I started going to school in the street, and my intake person, Mr. Porter, he said, look, because you had this experience while incarcerated, I think that you're suited for the situation that I want to put you in as an internship. So do you think that you can handle that? And I said, well, I developed a sense of, I had to first get over my biases. So I did that while I was inside, while I was, wrongfully incarcerated. I got over those biases. But once I transitioned out and I was home and I started going to college, getting my bachelor's degree and my master's degree and working at the same time, I was able to transition into an internship that really helped me to build my career later on.
Wow. Awesome. This reminds me of Will Smith's movie. I don't know if you had watched it, The Pursuit of Happiness. I don't know. Did you get to watch it?
I've seen it.
Okay. So, I mean, your story can be another biopic. Uh, in fact, that reminds me of Chris Gardner, who says that don't ever let someone tell you that you can't do something or you got a dream, you got to protect it. And the lines which I'm just reading, people can't do something themselves. They want to tell you that you can't do it. You want something, go get it, period.
Well, you can either become really disabled by the injustice of it all, or you can say to yourself, you know what, ultimately, there's an arc. Justice is going to prevail, and I absolutely believe that. And not only do I believe it, I'm going to make sure. So I participate in that process, but simultaneously, I still need to work on things about me because of how I came up, the things that has influenced me, the things that has had an impression on me. So rehabilitation for me was something that I had to really invest in. No deposit, no return. So when I went inside of the corrections, I had a fourth grade reading and comprehension level. Today I have a master's degree. I run my own business and I train psychologists, social workers, and counselors to be, more effective in the things that they do. So I don't never allow folks to determine who I am and what I can and cannot be, because I know that insurmountable odds, they can be overcame.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's what I
right.
bring to my clients. I don't have to disclose uh, who I am because that's not a part of my counseling techniques. But I exude the kind of confidence that help a client know that, hey, listen, man, if I can get through this, you can get through this. You just got to be willing to take a hit and keep moving forward. A boxer has to be willing to take a hit and keep moving forward. That's the only way you're going to become the champion of your circumstances.
Wow, I love those lines. The only way to become a champion of your circumstances is to again go through our barriers. So, who are the most influential people to you, or if you have to pick three people who had been most influential to you, who would that be?
I think well, Malcolm X helped me to read and write again. So I was certainly inspired by the Malcolm X autobiography that was written by Alex Haley. But I've also think that Robert Ludlum was another person who, while I was incarcerated, Robert Ludlum wrote books about espionage. I was able to absorb myself into his work, and I was able to see Amsterdam, Paris, and all of these different places around the globe, and all the espionage and intrigue through his eyes. And I mean, for years, I mean, I used to absorb these books, like, and it helped me to survive my surroundings. So, Robert Ludlum, Malcolm X, and I just think that just people in general, just watching people and see how they struggle and how they overcome things, was a big inspiration because, people are doing far worse than I could ever have been subjected to, and they still manage to praise God and move forward. So that's what I would say. I don't know, but that's what I would say.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing those authors. And if you had to go back, if you had to turn back the time and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would you tell? What would you tell him, or what would you tell yourself?
But you know what? It's the funny thing about the 18-year-old. The 18-year-old was a drug seller at the time when my father
Oh,
was really suffering from AIDS. And I told my grandmother one day, we were sitting at the table. I said, "Yeah, I saw Daddy. He's walking down the street. My father was in a state of dementia." So she said, "Well, why come you didn't put him in the cab and send him home?" And I said, "Well, why would I do that?" Because I felt that 18-year-old felt this way. If people see my father as a drug addict and almost ready to die, I'm out here hustling, selling cocaine 100 miles an hour, they're gonna think that they can treat me like they treated him. So I was so dialed into that code that when my father walked past me, I just let him walk past me like he wasn't my father, because he had fell into the condition that he fell into. So if I could tell that 18-year-old something, I would say to him, you carried a lot of guilt with you because you didn't even want to touch your father when your grandmother said, "Pick him up, let's take him to the hospital because he's getting ready to die." And I'm afraid of the AIDS because I don't know if I touch him, is he going to kill me? So I would say to that 18-year-old, forgive yourself.
okay. Again, to give yourself. Okay. Awesome. And so, with respect to all the people who are going through the struggle, who are going through the challenges now, the last 1 year, March 2020 to March 2021, right now, everybody has been going through that toughest journeys, getting locked down or being in quarantine. Everything accelerated. Things had tripled or quadrupled. How do you do teletherapy for your clients? How do you handle remotely people with abuse?
Well, we do Doxy, Doxy.me. It's a free platform where you can do basically telehealth. You can talk to clients in a confidential space. But I do know that people are wrestling with. See, some folks, a lot of people, I would say the majority of people in the country don't know absolutely nothing about isolation. I've been someone who's been in special housing unit in the box for 90 days looking at a fluorescent light. So prison has taught me about social distancing in a way that I look at COVID-19 now. It doesn't affect me in the same way that it affect my wife, my family, or the other people around because they're used to doing things. I'm used to just sitting in the room with my toilet and reading the book. So that kind of quietness, I'm able to sit with that. And I know that a lot of people are not able to sit with that. So they will, seek the substances, the mood altering drugs in order to cope with, their inability not to cope with something. So people are always running to, some other thing for refuge when they basically need to set with themselves. So when I talk to people doing telehealth, I try to gently get to that, to that place where, I'm like, hey, well, what is it all about? Why are you, in front of the liquor store with your hand out reaching for the bottle? There has to be some kind of explanation as to why you want to smoke weed and feel differently, because that artificial sense of self is telling you, in that I would call it an abusive relationship. I'll make you feel good if you continue to use me, but as soon as you want to put that thing down, it's going to beat you up and then tell you, I'm sorry, use me again. So I try to get people to understand that substances are spirits, and these spirits will come under attack when you sit across the table from me and we start talking, because I'm going to aggravate that spirit, because that spirit going to say, this guy wants you to stop using or want to encourage you to stop using, but I need for you to go cop. So it's just a question of, in the intermedium, what kind of decision are you going to make about, how you feel? And my thing is, I want to talk about how a person feels, so that way they can really begin to say, well, you are in control of your feelings. You just need to get past this rough patch.
Okay, that's again to keep the spark of being de-addicted. That's awesome. In fact, is it the same platform, Doxy.me?
Yeah, exactly.
DOXY. Okay. So if I am a victim of drug abuse or substance abuse,
Mhm.
how do you begin? As in, I know for sure that affirmations or positive thinking will not work, definitely. But if you have to show something from your toolkit as a sample, what would that be? I'm a little excited, a little curious, I should say. Uh, what would that one thing be? How do you like? Is there a magic wand, or how do you do it?
I would
If
ask
I'm
I would ask the client, one quick. I said, if there is something that you could get out of treatment, what would that be? If there was something that, if you could say help, and there was a place where you can actually get that help, what would that help look like for you? I mean, what is it that you want? Because, you know, there may be that you that's underneath all the rest of the stuff that's taking place, that's saying, you know what, I don't like the condition that I'm in, and I want to, really start to address that. What does that look like? How can I help you, begin to move some of that stuff around so we can see you a little closer? Because
oh, okay.
that's to me, it's really about people surfacing, because the drugs, the brutality of, being addicted and all the rest of these things have covered you up, and we need to really find you. So how can we be true to you? Where you at?
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep. As in, people who need the transformation will certainly look for better. But again, the root cause of all these addictions are on their road to recovery. Everything falls down to their financial literacy or their financial earnings, which could be weekly or bi-weekly or monthly. Now, for people who are receiving the benefit from the government, I guess it's a different game altogether.
Well, it may
Um,
be deeper than that. It may be as simple as this. What it ain't about, because to me, materialism, it's not about the money or the coins of riches of gold, silver and gold. I don't think it's about that. What I think it's really about is, I ask client, what has made you feel bad about yourself?
oh,
That's the place that we want to get, because there is a parable in the Bible where uh, there is a great gate, and there is a bum there begging for alms, begging people for change, food, or whatever. And the disciples come by, and the bums ask the disciples for coins and stuff like that. And one of the disciples said, "Silver and gold I have not, but what I do have, I give to you freely. Pick up your mat and walk." So what he gave to the person in Christ's word was faith and hope and hope. He didn't give them coins. He didn't give them food. And I know that people need these things. But when people come to treatment, they don't need money. They don't need a check. They need to check themselves and say, hey, what made you feel bad? And how can we get you back in touch with that person to make you feel better? How can we get you back there? That's what I have to give to my clients. I don't have silver and gold.
Okay, and this also reminds me of a few marriage and family therapists, because I know how my parents were at home as a child, like the way you mentioned, 13-year-old Thurman Brown, probably as a child, you were standing behind your door and watching your dad. The same way I was also picturing or visualizing my story. Even every child, I guess, would be going through a similar journey. And this reminds me of the marriage and family therapist. Now, one of the biggest reasons are the best way to have a happy life. Again, I learned this from one of my mentors. If you need a happy life, you need happy wife. That it's like if your spouse is happy, everything else in life will be happy. As in, be it your career, be it the things which you want to achieve professionally, personally. I mean, the world becomes a much happier place, is what he taught me. And the way you mentioned, people don't need checks or coins or gold or silver. Again, people need a ray of hope. That ray of hope can be anything. But awesome. In fact, thank you so much, Thurman, for sharing this. So this let's quickly. I've got few questions before we wrap this,
Okay.
so that we got awesome pieces of content out there for our newsletter too. If you want to make this world a better place, do we need to make everybody who's going through substance abuse or alcohol abuse, make them all clean, or how do you make this world a better place?
Well, my last few years have been spent on creating or increasing access to services. So, it's one thing to have services out there, but it's a whole entirely different thing for people to really take advantage of the services that's out there. So, I would like to amplify healthcare to the point to where people can hear that you don't have to go on suffering all of these ills, because some of them can be addressed. But you got to have it within yourself to walk through the doors and say, I need help. So we do have bureaucracies and all the rest of that that's really just out the snacks and not really responsive to people. We still have to invite people to come in to the safety net, invite people to take advantage of Medicaid or whatever there is out there that's going to help people become more healthier. And then we can start figuring out, the rest of this happy place that the world could gravitate towards. But first, we need to start getting people in the place to where they can see their situation more clearly.
Yeah, that definitely brings a better clarity. So again, this clarity is like the way you put it. If you can't make a deposit, you can't get a return. I guess that comes only with a coach, and that's where I see. Okay, let me flash the Thurman consultant on the screen. So if anybody had to reach you out through social media, which is the best place they can reach you out, Thurman?
Well, you can. I'm definitely on LinkedIn every day, but you can certainly reach Thurman Brown Consultants. You would see my email there. You see my telephone number there. You email me, and I will respond to your email. And in that response, you will have linked to everything that I do. But I certainly will, circle back with you and try to help you as best way as I possibly can.
Awesome. And um, okay, I thought probably let me. I'm just trying to see if there's anything which I need to ask again to improve uh, whatever people are going through with respect to de-addiction or on the road to recovery. Are there any ways we can remove the barriers? Obviously, there should be client acceptance, but apart from your toolkit, now for people who reach out on the website, thurmanbrownconsultant.com, do they have any resources out there like for people to take away or?
Well, it depends on what country you're in. It depends on what state you're in. If you within the United States, because one of the referrals are always there. And referrals are free. Like with uh, uh, therapy for Black males, you get a 15-minute free consultation. So you can always call me up there on Doxy Me, and we will give you a 15-minute consultation and say, well, this is what your options is based on what you just said to me, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that option will be me.
Oh, okay.
So I will give you, like I said, I give you information.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, Thurman, for the 45 minutes of golden time. Again, on the discovery call or 15-minute free consultation. Normally, people fear that there would be lots of pitching, people or online, be it teletherapy or with respect to telemedicine. One of the biggest fears out there for many people who are taking out the service, the fear people selling online. But I see that with the kind of content which you have already shared and a couple of other content which I've seen on your LinkedIn. Thank you so much for whatever you're doing for the community, and thank you so much for bringing this to our newsletter, monthly newsletter, which we'll put it across to clinicians at DirectShifts. And we will see you in another episode of Direct Shift Stories. Do you have any more questions for me, Thurman? Like,
No, I just I thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to do therapy with y'all because it's not really, it's not, to me, it's I tell my clients, I say, look, I do treatment every day. I just call it work. But what you don't realize is that, as I talk to you and help you through your process, I'm also revisiting my stuff at the same time. And I'm looking at how you are strong enough to, make these decisions. And I'm saying, hey, I can use this information for myself as well. So there's always that give and take out of relationships. So I love sitting down talking to people because I walk away from the encounter feeling strengthened in my resolve to live one day at a time. And I'm helping them to, live that one moment at a time. So the relationship grows off of one another. So I thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to share that philosophy with your audience.
thank you, Thurman. In fact, in this particular story or in this podcast, you reminded me of Les Brown too. I don't know if you heard about Les Brown.
I know who he is.
Yeah, like you reminded me in few of the words or a few of the codes which you mentioned. You reminded me like the way he speaks, and you reminded me about the pursuit of happiness. The way the you narrated the story, it's inspirational for me. I had little goosebumps, but it's amazing. So for all the viewers, in case if anybody is watching the replay, you can also listen to this on Google Podcasts and Apple Podcast within 24 hours from now. This will also get published on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and the live recordings will be shared. Again, it'll be through Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So do share in your feedback, and we will catch you with another episode of Direct Shift Stories with another guest sometime next week. Thank you, Thurman. Thank you so much
Thank you,
for
guys.
being here. Bye bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.